After the birthday dinner, Chen and I stood at the hotel entrance, watching the last of the relatives depart. Once his parents' car pulled away, the stiff smile finally dropped from my face. I pulled myself free from the tight circle of his arm. Your dad seemed happy tonight. You achieved your goal. I'm leaving now. I turned to go, but Daniel moved quickly, stepping in front of me. Somehow, a vibrant bouquet of roses and hyacinths had appeared in his hands. Today's May 20th, he said, his voice softer than usual. Want to grab dinner tonight? Just us. It was only then I noticed he was wearing an old suit. The first birthday gift I'd ever given him after we started dating. He deemed it cheap and unattractive. Back then, never wearing it. In our 5 years of marriage, it seemed not a single gift I'd given had ever truly pleased him or earned his gratitude. I booked your favorite Japanese place, he continued, his tone earnest. The ingredients are incredibly fresh, flown in specially. The quality is amazing. I've never cared for Japanese food. I cut him off coolly. What I've always loved is what you call junk food. Hot pot and spicy malatang. And Daniel. I looked up, meeting his gaze directly, watching his hopeful expression slowly freeze. We're already divorced. Daniel and I met in the dead of winter. I remember the day vividly, biting cold, stinging wind. I found his lost wallet, and when I returned it, he thanked me with a smile so warm it felt like stepping out of a blizzard and into a sun-drenched peach orchard in spring. We were married for 5 years. We didn't even make it to the proverbial 7-year itch. 6 months ago, he was the one who asked for a divorce. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the way, the words between us dried up. Our interactions became increasingly polite, courteous, to the point of feeling like strangers sharing a roof. He still smiled, but his smiles were hollow, masking layers of detachment and weariness. The day he asked for the divorce was his birthday. I'd had a premonition, a heavy sense of foreboding all day. Yet, when he actually placed the divorce papers in front of me, the overwhelming emotion I felt wasn't devastation, but a strange, unexpected sense of relief. This just isn't working anymore, Clara, he'd said, his voice detached, clinical. Let's get divorced. Maybe our connection was just shallow. You can have the house. And 70% of the assets. He laid out the terms like a business proposal, negotiating a deal with a partner, each syllable devoid of warmth or emotion. I didn't even let him finish. I picked up the pen and signed my name. He stared at me, momentarily stunned. If this is too sudden for you, he stammered, we can wait. A month, 2 months before we register it officially. Do you have any other requests? I'll try my best to meet them. Only one condition, I said, dropping the pen, standing up. We go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow. We divorced quietly, agreeing to keep it from our parents and relatives for the time being. His father had a weak heart, and I didn't want to disappoint or worry my own parents. He gave me the house, our marital home, but I couldn't bear to step back inside. The day the divorce was finalized, I packed my bags and sought refuge with my best friend, Lena Liu, planning to stay until I found my own place. To our friends, Daniel and I had always represented the utopian ideal of love. When Lena found out, she was ready to hunt him down with the metaphorical knife. It's okay, Lena, really? I reassured her, trying to calm her fury. He didn't cheat. There was no other woman. I'm fine, honestly. And I knew it was true. Daniel wasn't leaving me for someone else. He simply wanted out of the marriage. Lena burst into tears, great racking sobs. That night, I held my best friend as she cried her heart out, comforting her while my own eyes remained dry. My throat, however, felt tight, constricted, salty with unshed tears. It took me 6 months to recalibrate, to find my footing again. Life slowly started to feel normal, returning to a familiar rhythm. So when Daniel called, asking me to attend his father's birthday banquet, my initial reaction was resistance. But I went. His parents had always been kind to me, and I didn't want to cause the elderly man any distress. Seeing Daniel again at the banquet, I felt surprisingly little. Even when he was particularly attentive towards me, even when he deliberately chose a hot pot restaurant for the family gathering, a clear nod to my preference he'd always dismissed, I felt detached. I kept my head down mostly, exchanging polite small talk with the elders, avoiding his gaze. Even now, standing before me, holding this beautiful bouquet, asking for a second chance, the predominant emotion I felt was a faint sense of absurdity. Clara, please listen, he pleaded, his handsome face etched with sincerity and hope. I've done a lot of thinking these past 6 months. I realized we're still the best match for each other. His earnestness was almost convincing. For a fleeting moment, I felt an absurd urge to punch him. Daniel, I said instead, my voice level, you should probably lay off the hot pot from now on. What? He looked confused. Your system can only handle high-end cuisine. Hot pot seems to be making you talk nonsense. With that parting shot, I turned and walked away without looking back. It wasn't until I was safely inside a taxi that I realized my knuckles were white from gripping my handbag so tightly. Arriving back at Lena's apartment, I was stunned by the sight that greeted me. The small living room was overflowing with flowers, dozens upon dozens of bouquets, turning the space into a veritable floral jungle. Lena, mid-face mask, bounced excitedly. Clara, you're back. Flowers have been arriving non-stop since morning. Do you think, after 30 years of being single, the god of marriage finally noticed me this 520? Who would go to such lengths to woo me? Although, she paused, examining a bouquet critically, this person's a bit clueless. Who sends so many hyacinths and yellow roses? Don't those mean apology and asking for forgiveness? Apology. Forgiveness. Daniel's face flashed in my mind. I took a deep breath, struggling to speak. My expression must have given me away. Lena's excited chatter stopped abruptly. Realization dawned in her eyes. Don't tell me, she said slowly. These are from Daniel? That night I watched numbly as Lena systematically dismantled the floral invasion, stomping on bouquets, muttering creative curses, directed at Daniel's ancestors back 18 generations. Only after the floral massacre was complete did her temper finally subside. Okay, but seriously, she said, turning to me, her usual bluster replaced with concern. Clara, what do you really want? Despite her fiery temper, Lena always respected my decisions. Seeing the worry in her eyes, I gave her a hug. Lena, I've imposed on you for 6 months. It's time I moved out. After the divorce, she'd insisted I not live alone. But now that Daniel was clearly trying to re-enter my life, I didn't want him disrupting hers too. Are you really going to forgive that bastard? She asked, frowning. I've already rented a place, I replied with a faint smile. And that guy you mentioned, the one you wanted to introduce me to? I told him I'd meet him. My new apartment was near my office. Only Lena knew the address. I met the man. Lena introduced David Dew, one of her colleagues. He was gentle, well-mannered, polite. Crucially, he understood boundaries. While I didn't feel any romantic spark, we got along well enough, striking up a casual friendship. During this time, I blocked Daniel's number and muted his WeChat notifications. He tried ambushing me outside my office building once or twice, but I managed to slip out through the side entrance. Occasionally, I'd catch glimpses of him, interviews on TV, articles in business magazines. He was a rising star in the business world, a frequent topic of office gossip. There was a time I felt proud hearing my colleagues praise him, basking in his reflected glory. Now those warm memories felt distant, blurred like faded photographs. Clara, you seem out of it lately. Fight with the hubby? A colleague asked one day during lunch break. If you're having relationship problems, you have to listen to the Jong Xian Talks podcast. Another chimed in. Did you hear Daniel Chun was on yesterday? He talked about this girl he let slip away. Oh my god, it made me cry all night. My coffee stirrer slipped, splashing hot liquid onto my fingers. I winced. The Daniel I knew would never have appeared on such a personal, emotional talk show. I tried countless times to get him to agree to a light-hearted entertainment interview with Lena, who also worked in media, but he always refused sternly, insisting he only did serious professional publications. Well, people change, I thought wryly. Habits certainly do. Shaking my head, I tried to clear my thoughts and focus on work. Suddenly my phone rang. My dad. He said Daniel had called my mom, telling her I was feeling homesick and planned to visit them soon. I mumbled some non-committal response to my dad and hung up, nearly snapping the coffee stirrer in half. A surge of frustration burned within me. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of meetings and deadlines. By the time I finally got home, I'd made a decision. Taking a deep breath, I unblocked Daniel's number and dialed. His surprise was palpable. Clara, you finally called me. Daniel, I interrupted coolly. I need a favor. Tomorrow is the Mid-Autumn Festival. Come home with me to see my parents. Really? Claire, I'm so happy. So you'll do it? Thanks. I have to go now. Wait. His voice turned suddenly anxious, hesitant. I'm sorry. I know you're angry. You weren't answering my calls or messages. I just wanted to see you so badly, but I didn't dare bother you at work. I didn't know what else to do, so I called your dad. Don't worry, he rushed on. I didn't say anything about the divorce. I hung up before he could finish, just like he used to hang up on me mid-sentence when work called. My parents, both educators, had always been immensely proud of their son-in-law Daniel. My mother, especially, often repeated the adage, a son-in-law is half a son. Whenever we visited, she'd prepare a feast. Today, Mid-Autumn Festival was no different. My parents were warm and welcoming, the table laden with food. The only difference was Daniel. Usually polite but reserved, today he was exceptionally attentive, even insisting on cooking several of his specialty dishes himself. In all our years together, I could count the number of times he'd cooked for me on one hand. This sudden display of domesticity charmed my parents completely. They praised him effusively for being so thoughtful and considerate. To me, however, it felt jarring, artificial. During the meal, as we raised our glasses for a toast, Daniel suddenly reached under the table and grasped my hand, his grip tight, almost desperate. Mom, Dad, he announced, his voice loud and clear. Clara and I have decided to start trying for a baby. We might need your help down the road. My parents were ecstatic. My mother's eyes welled up with happy tears. Starting a family was something I'd wanted early in our marriage, but he'd always put it off, too young, too busy with work. I used to think he simply didn't like children. Later I realized it was simpler. He didn't love me enough. He wanted to avoid complications for the inevitable day he decided to leave. So hearing those words now coming from him caught me completely off guard. Daniel then took my wine glass, his tone full of mock concern. Honey, you shouldn't be drinking if we're trying to conceive. How about some juice instead? His voice trembled slightly. Under the table, his grip on my hand tightened further, as if clinging to a lifeline. Paradoxically, his desperation gave me the final ounce of strength I needed. I let him hold my hand, but I looked directly at my parents. Mom, Dad, I said, my voice clear and steady, though my heart pounded against my ribs. I'm sorry. We're already divorced. Silence descended upon the table. The only sounds were the frantic thudding of Daniel's heart, audible even across the small space, and the shocked gasp from my mother. His eyes locked on mine were wide with disbelief, rapidly filling with a dark, pained red. It was the most uncomfortable Mid-Autumn Festival dinner of my 30 years. Yet somehow it was also the bravest meal I'd ever eaten. Leaving my parents' house, Daniel followed me silently, matching my pace, until we were outside the residential complex gate. Only then did he speak, his voice hoarse. Clara, do you hate me that much? I shook my head, deliberately ignoring the raw devastation in his eyes. I think you misunderstood. You thought I still had feelings. For you. I also hope you'll inform your own parents. Obviously, I won't be attending any more family gatherings on your side. Daniel. I stopped, turning to face him fully, meeting his gaze squarely. I have a boyfriend now. A flicker of panic crossed his face, quickly followed by a bitter, self-deprecating laugh. All right, Clara. I get it. You're still not ready to forgive me. You don't have to lie like this. His words died in his throat. Just then, another man walked up beside me, casually draping an arm around my shoulders. David Dew smiled warmly. Darling, I'm here to pick you up. He nodded politely at Daniel before gently guiding me towards his parked car. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, then his body seemed to crumple inward, his shoulders hunching. As he lifted his head, his face was flushed crimson, contorted in pain, sweat dripping from his chin onto the pavement below. David, I said, turning back around, forcing my voice to remain steady, realizing my own palms were damp with sweat. Can you do me one more favor? Using the number I provided, David called Daniel's assistant, informing him that Mr. Chen seemed unwell and needed to be picked up from my parents' neighborhood. When we stopped at a red light, David handed me a tissue without comment. It's probably none of my business, he said gently after a moment, but if you still care enough about him to worry, why ask me to play this part? I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. Daniel has a history of acute stress disorder, I explained quietly. Even if we're completely over, I couldn't just leave him there having an episode. I remembered the first time it happened early in our relationship. He was facing a major crisis with his startup, on the verge of ruin. Those were dark days. He'd collapsed, physically ill from the stress, vomiting, unable to function. I'd stayed by his side constantly for a week, nursing him back to health. Those days were difficult? Yes, but there was a sweetness to them too. A sense of shared struggle, of deep connection. I never thought he'd have such a visceral physical reaction because of me. The thought left a complex mix of emotions swirling inside me. "Thank you, David," I murmured sincerely. He looked at me, his smile genuine. "You know, the best way to get over an unpleasant memory is often to create new pleasant ones. Clara, maybe give us a try." "I'm sorry, David," I said softly, turning to look out the window again. He just shook his head slightly, a gentle smile still on his lips. He didn't push, just reached over and turned on the radio. Eason Chan's melancholic voice filled the car. The future that was once within reach. Now worlds apart. "I love you so much." "Sorry. Thank you." Life seemed to settle back into a quiet routine after that. I had another long, honest talk with my parents. They were far more resilient and understanding than I'd anticipated. My father, in particular, reiterated his unwavering support, which was the greatest comfort I could ask for. I listed the house with a realtor, and surprisingly, it sold quickly. Signing the final papers felt like a definitive severing of ties with my past life. I went back to the house one last time to pack my remaining belongings, watching as the movers carried out the furniture, the decorations piece by piece, items I had chosen and arranged with such care years ago. Seeing the rooms empty left an echoing emptiness inside me too. But emptiness isn't always bad, I told myself. It means there's space to fill with something new. That evening, Lena dragged me and David to a bar. Rarely frequented such places. I sat nursing a single drink, watching the energetic crowd on the dance floor, feeling detached, my own heart still. I didn't drink much that night. I had an important presentation at work the next day and needed a clear head. We were getting a new boss. The entire office was buzzing the next morning. Everyone was dressed their best. Rumor had it the new director of operations was a heavy hitter, headhunted by the big boss at great expense. Imagine my shock when Daniel Chen, impeccably dressed, radiating confidence and charisma, walked into the office and was introduced as our new director. He didn't even glance my way during the initial introductions before disappearing into a meeting with the CEO. But I felt his presence like a physical weight, sitting at my desk, unable to concentrate, acutely aware of him just floors above me. OMG, I can't believe Daniel Chen is our new boss. He's even more handsome in person. Did you see? He looked right at me when he walked past. I almost fainted. Look at Clara, she looks like she's seen a ghost. Too bad you're married, Clara. Us single ladies might actually have a chance now, haha. The office buzzed with excited whispers and laughter. I'd been at the company for 2 years. My colleagues knew I was married but nothing more. Daniel had always disdained our casual company gatherings and had never attended one. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to regain composure. Clara, you've moved on. Just treat him like any other boss. Ignore him. I managed to avoid any direct interaction with him all day, delegating tasks, sending emails instead of going to his office. But as closing time approached, I had no choice but to deliver a finalized project proposal directly to him. Here's the WAFN project plan for your review, I said stiffly, placing the folder on his desk, turning immediately to leave. Clara. His voice was sharp, urgent. You've been avoiding me all day. He stood up abruptly, leaning slightly across his desk. Don't you know, he said, his voice dropping lower, more intense, that I took this job just so I could see you again? I had almost reached the door. His words ignited a fresh wave of anger. I spun around, marched back to his desk and stared him down. And I'm supposed to be grateful for that? I demanded, my voice trembling slightly. You disrupted my personal life, and now you're invading my professional life too? Daniel, what exactly is your problem? Why can't you just leave me alone? Clara, I just want another chance to win you back. Seeing the raw vulnerability, the genuine pain in his eyes, I felt a flicker of something, pity? Regret? But I ruthlessly suppressed it. I let out a cold, sharp laugh. Daniel, I said contemptuously, don't force me to lose all respect for you. It's over between us, Daniel. Please stop interfering in my life. With that final declaration, I turned and walked out of his office, head held high. The moment I was out of his line of sight, however, a stinging sensation filled my eyes. Leaving Daniel again, even under these circumstances, left me feeling raw, unsettled. Why did his admission, his plea, still affect me so deeply? I told myself I was over him, that the past was truly past. But hearing him say he wanted to pursue me again. For a treacherous moment, tears had threatened to fall. To prevent myself from weakening, I had lashed out with the cruelest words I could muster. That night I found myself back at a bar alone, drinking until the world blurred. I drank until I blacked out, having no memory of how I eventually got home. I woke up the next morning shortly before 8 a.m., my head pounding. My phone was dead, battery drained. Explaining why my alarm hadn't gone off. Scrambling, nursing a brutal hangover, I managed to make it to the office just in the nick of time, miraculously avoiding being late. As I slumped into my chair, my colleagues were already deep in discussion, gossiping about Daniel naturally. Did you hear? Director Chen got stood up last night. My boyfriend and I saw him at that fancy restaurant, you know, the one he always goes to. He was waiting alone for hours right until they closed. Can you imagine? What kind of woman would ditch Daniel Chen? Daniel had a date last night? And got stood up? A cold premonition washed over me. Fumbling for my charger, I plugged in my dead phone. As the screen flickered to life, notifications flooded in. Dozens of missed calls and unread messages. All from Daniel. He had asked me to meet him last night. At the restaurant where we had our very first date. His messages were filled with desperate pleas, begging me for one last chance to talk. Each message ended with the same phrase. Don't ignore me, okay? It was a throwback to our early dating days. That slightly pleading, almost boyish phrase had been his signature way of apologizing, seeking forgiveness after a disagreement. A small, private code between us. But as time wore on, those little intimacies faded, replaced by his increasing detachment, his dismissive sighs, making me feel like an irritating burden. Stonily, I began deleting the messages one by one, wiping them away as if they'd never existed. I braced myself for another confrontation with Daniel today, mentally preparing my arguments, ready to draw firm boundaries. But surprisingly, he acted as if I were invisible. No lingering glances, no attempts to speak to me. Nothing. He must have finally given up, I thought, relief washing over me. As I didn't show up last night. Good. This was for the best. That evening I received a call from David. He was downstairs, outside my office building, waiting to pick me up. I knew what this meant. He was making his intentions clear. He wanted to pursue a relationship. But the wreckage of my 5-year marriage had left me weary, disillusioned with love. And looking back, using David as a shield against Daniel felt like a mistake, unfair to him. Now that Daniel seemed to have finally retreated, it was time to set things straight with David too. Stepping out of the building, I spotted him immediately, leaning against his car. He wore large sunglasses that obscured much of his face, but even so, I could see faint bruising around his right eye. What happened to you? I asked, concerned, reaching up to gently remove his sunglasses. A dark bruise bloomed beneath his eye. He looked like he'd been punched. David just grinned nonchalantly. The price of being a knight in shining armor, he said lightly. Totally worth it. I didn't understand. Knight in shining armor? I repeated blankly. Seeing my confusion, David pointed to his bruised eye, looking incredulous. Clara, don't tell me you forgot how I got this last night? Last night? My mind was a complete blank after the third cocktail. Last night, David prompted. I fought Daniel Chen for your honor. You don't remember that either. His words hit me like a thunderclap. Want to know what happened? David asked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Buy me dinner, and I'll tell you everything. Over dinner, David recounted the events of the previous night. Daniel had indeed asked me to meet him for a final plea. Meanwhile, I was drowning my sorrows at the bar, completely oblivious to his messages. David happened to be at the same bar and, seeing my state, offered to take me home. Unfortunately, Daniel, having somehow obtained my new address, had shown up downstairs, intending to wait for me. He arrived just in time to see David helping a very drunk, stumbling me out of his car. Apparently, Daniel lost control, assumed the worst, and immediately threw a punch at David. I was horrified. I knew Daniel had stresses, but physical violence? That was completely out of character. I apologized profusely to David. He just waved it off with a smile. No need to apologize. You already got revenge for me right then and there. You were completely wasted, but you launched yourself at Daniel, hitting him, yelling. He basically fled in terror. David then proceeded to mimic my drunken tirade. Daniel-chan, I've had enough. I felt like a piece of furniture in your house. You ignored me, neglected me. Being with you these past years, it drained me. They say marriage is the death of love. You were my tomb. Being with you felt like being dead. I've had enough. I'm alive now, finally. And you won't drag me back into that grave. Daniel, David continued, his voice softening, imitating a drunken slur. It's so cold in the tomb. So lonely. Just let me go. Hearing my own drunken raw words repeated back to me, I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. So that's what I looked like when drunk? A bitter, resentful harpy? The raw vulnerability, the deep-seated pain I tried so hard to bury. All laid bare. David gently touched my shoulder. Clara, it's good that you let it out. Sometimes you need to purge the past. There are better things waiting for you in the future. I gently removed his hand. David, I said seriously, meeting his gaze. I'm sorry, but I'm really not ready to start anything new right now. And I'm truly sorry for using you as a shield before. After clearing the air with David, my life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Daniel maintained a professional distance at work. Aside from the occasional, overly intense gaze or a moment where he seemed about to speak but then stopped himself, our interactions were strictly boss-subordinate. His unusual behavior soon faded into the background noise of my life. My focus shifted dramatically when my parents, on vacation, suffered severe food poisoning. They were rushed to the hospital immediately upon returning home. Thankfully, after treatment, the doctors confirmed no lasting damage, but they needed to stay for observation. Juggling hospital visits with a demanding project deadline at work left me stretched thin, exhausted. Romance and relationship drama were the furthest things from my mind. Fortunately, there was an incredibly kind and helpful caregiver auntie at the hospital who often assisted me with my parents when she saw how overwhelmed I was. On the day my parents were discharged, I made a point of finding the auntie to give her a thank you gift. She initially refused but eventually accepted with a warm smile. When I returned to my parents' room after settling the hospital bill, I found David already there, having packed their belongings, chatting easily with them as if they were old friends. Seeing me, my mom gave me a conspiratorial wink and whispered in my ear, "Your new boyfriend is very nice, dear." My dad beamed. "David's been visiting us every day we were here. He even asked us to keep it a secret from you." My parents proudly introduced their daughter's wonderful new boyfriend to the nurses and other patients nearby. I knew they were happy. My divorce, while they supported my decision, had clearly saddened them. Like all parents, they wished for my happiness, for a stable, loving partnership. Seeing their cheerful faces now, I couldn't bring myself to burst their bubble by explaining David and I were just friends. Later, when we were alone for a moment, I gently reiterated to David that I wasn't looking for a relationship. He just smiled. "I know, Clara. I'm just making my presence known. If someday you do feel ready to start again, I hope I'll be the first person you think of." After David left, I gently explained to my parents that David and I weren't really that close. My father took my hand. "Clara," he said kindly, "your mother and I just want you to be happy. Whatever you decide, we support you. You're young, live your life. But don't close your heart off completely. Don't deny others a chance. And don't deny yourself one either." I turned away quickly, hiding the tears that sprang to my eyes. Back at work, the project hit a snag requiring a business trip. I was assigned to go, along with several colleagues and Daniel. On the plane, our seats were inevitably assigned next to each other. The silence between us was thick, awkward, making our colleagues visibly nervous, likely assuming Daniel was displeased with their work. Daniel attempted to break the ice first. "Your parents," he began hesitantly. "I mean, after they were discharged, are they recovering well? How did you know they were hospitalized?" I asked, surprised. Then realization dawned. That incredibly helpful caregiver auntie. "You hired her, didn't you?" He nodded after a long pause. "Yes. I knew you wouldn't want to see me, wouldn't accept my help directly. But I couldn't just stand by and watch you run yourself ragged." I started to say something, but the plane began its takeoff roll just then. I have a terrible fear of heights and flying. Daniel never knew. Early in our relationship, the most romantic gesture he ever made was proposing to me at the top of a Ferris wheel. I was terrified, gripping the seat, but masked my pale face with bright lipstick and blush, overwhelmed by the supposed romance of the moment. Back then, giddy with love, the fear was secondary. Now, without the buffer of infatuation, the familiar nausea and dizziness washed over me. I shrank into my seat, trying to breathe deeply, telling myself I was already asleep, couldn't feel anything. Daniel noticed my distress immediately. "Clara? Are you all right? What's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. All my energy was focused on battling the vertigo and nausea. I barely had the capacity to register his expression. He seemed genuinely alarmed, starting to signal a flight attendant. I quickly grabbed his arm. "It's okay," I managed weakly. "Just fear of heights and motion sickness. It'll pass." He looked stunned, as if piecing something together, perhaps remembering the Ferris wheel proposal, my forced smiles. Finally, his hand closed quietly over mine. "Don't be afraid," he murmured softly. "I'm right here. Don't be afraid, Clara. There's a vulnerability that comes with illness, with fear." As his hand gripped mine, steady and warm, I found, surprisingly, that the fear lessened just a little. After landing, we plunged into intense project work. After a solid week of late nights and early mornings, we finally got the project back on track. And then, inevitably, I collapsed, coming down with a raging fever. Daniel sent the rest of the team back to the office with the revised plans, telling them he had some personal matters to attend to. In reality, he stayed behind to take care of me. Lying deliriously in the hotel bed, I vaguely felt him placing a cool, damp towel, wrapped around ice, on my forehead. "Is this right?" he murmured, almost to himself. "I remember when I was sick, this is how you used to take care of me." His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his voice raspy with fatigue. I tried to sit up, but he gently pushed me back down. "Don't move. You have a fever." "Daniel, you don't have to do this," I protested weakly, the words feeling heavy, exhausting. He sat silently on the edge of the bed for a moment, then poured a bowl of plain rice porridge from a thermos he'd brought, offering me a spoonful. "Clara," he said quietly, "I want to talk. Can you give me a chance?" I turned my face away. He put the porridge down, his gaze distant, speaking as if thinking aloud. "Before I'd come home and there would always be delicious food waiting. My clothes were always clean, perfectly ironed. When I was sick, you were always there. But I never knew if you were ever sick, if you were eating properly. I was so focused on work, on building my business. I neglected you for so long." "Stop it," I whispered. I thought our marriage was stagnant," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I was bored, restless. I wanted out. But only after losing you did I realize I couldn't function without you. I was so used to you being there. Used to you being my wife, me being your husband. Clara. I'm sorry, Clara. I love you." I don't know which specific word, which phrase finally breached my defenses. My eyes burned, stinging with unshed tears, but I refused to let them fall. He continued talking, haltingly at first, then more fluently, telling me about his past 6 months, about how my drunken words that night, the ones David had repeated, had shaken him to the core, how he'd sought professional counseling, how the therapist helped him reevaluate his marriage, his priorities, his past behavior. "Clara, listen," he pleaded. "I always thought I was successful, that through hard work and determination I could achieve anything. But with you, I constantly doubted myself. What did I really want from life? It took these past 6 months, this emptiness without you, to finally figure it out. Don't leave. Walk slower, wait for me. Please just wait for me." His voice cracked, choked with emotion. He looked lost, like a child caught making a mistake, desperately seeking forgiveness. In that moment I had to admit it. All my anger, my coldness towards him, it was just a shield. Self-protection forged from deep hurt. Maybe I still loved him too. But that love had been starved, suffocated by years of his neglect and indifference, leaving me gasping for air. "Daniel," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, meeting his desperate gaze. "You said you've thought things through, right? You said you respect my decision, right?" "Well," I took a breath. "I haven't thought it through yet. Let me think about it." A spark of hope flared in Daniel's eyes. Relief washed over his face. At least I hadn't rejected him outright. 3 days later, I boarded a plane back home alone. I left Daniel a letter. I don't know what I want yet, but I know right now it's not you. Daniel, time can clarify things. Let's give each other space. 3 years is long enough for perspective. If after 3 years you still feel the same, maybe then I'll be willing to try again. After returning home, I resigned from my job immediately, avoiding any further contact with Daniel. He, respecting my wishes perhaps, didn't seek me out. My turbulent heart finally began to settle. I decided to travel. Lena offered to take leave and join me, but I gently refused. I needed to do this alone. To walk, to think, to truly disconnect from my old life, my old self. I wandered through more than a dozen countries over the next year and a half, exploring, observing, writing. Along the way, I started documenting my travels, my encounters, the stories I gathered. Unexpectedly, my travel blog gained traction, and I found myself becoming a minor travel writer, known for capturing not just landscapes but the quiet moments of connection between couples I observed along the way. My readers, many yearning for romance themselves, connected with my honest reflections. I was upfront with them. I'd had a failed marriage, carried deep scars. I wasn't a relationship expert, just an observer sharing what I saw, what I felt. This year and a half of wandering brought a sense of peace and clarity I hadn't felt in years. Then, one sunny afternoon in Giethoorn, the Venice of the Netherlands, I was posing for a local artist sketching portraits by a picturesque canal bridge. I leaned against the railing, enjoying the tranquil scenery. Suddenly, a figure came into view on the bridge, pulling a heavy suitcase. Dressed in casual clothes, looking slightly travel-worn but unmistakably familiar. Daniel. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, stirring something within me. But I didn't turn, didn't acknowledge him, maintaining my pose for the artist. Daniel walked up beside me, leaning against the bridge railing too. He nodded politely to the artist. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm. "Could you sketch me as well? Right here next to this lady." The artist's eyes twinkled with amusement and unspoken questions, but he simply started sketching, asking no permission from me. Daniel stood close. So close I could smell the faint, familiar scent of his old shower gel. "I'm sorry, Clara," he murmured, his voice low, almost swallowed by the breeze. "I lasted a year and a half. That was my absolute limit." I finally turned to look at him. His face was leaner, tanned, a light stubble shadowing his jaw, making him look more rugged, more mature. He looked suddenly nervous, almost shy, shaking his head slightly as if anticipating rejection. "Don't misunderstand," he added quickly. "I'm not here to pressure you about getting back together. I just thought, for the remaining year and a half, maybe I could just walk with you? Would that be okay?" I took a deep breath, the scent of water and flowers filling my lungs. I didn't answer. I simply stood up straight and started walking away down the path. He remained frozen by the railing, a look of utter desolation washing over his face. After a few steps, I stopped and turned back. "Well," I called out, raising an eyebrow, "are you just going to stand there? If you lose my luggage, I'll never forgive you." I turned again, walking away more briskly this time, a small smile playing on my lips. Behind me, after a beat of stunned silence, I heard his delighted laugh, followed by the cheerful rattle of suitcase wheels hurrying to catch up. Music drifted from a nearby cafe, mingling with distant whistles. Suddenly, I felt a pang of homesickness. But this time it felt different. Less like longing for a place, more like anticipation for a new beginning. The inn.